Okay, and we're live. This is the OSRA client meeting for Sunday, March 8th, 2015. Here we have Ranim and Tarek, and from the dev team, Christian and myself. Ranim and Tarek, let's start with you giving us an update on how things are going with the application, if there are any problems, if everything is working as expected.
Okay. So far, everything is okay. It's working as expected. We had came out with some enhancements and comments, which we mentioned, I think, last week or the week before in our last meeting. Nothing new. After that, we don't have any other notes or enhancements yet.
Okay.
The last post was from Ranim on March 2nd for the fields in, for the templates of the English names, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the last thing from our side.
Okay. Okay. Ranim, do you have anything to add?
Nothing new.
Okay.
Everything is okay. No problems with the application.
Okay, good. Christian and I, just before we get started, what we were discussing was that this main issue that we were talking about last week, about the fact that the translation was inversed, and we're storing the data in the database as father alive, yes or no, whereas in your spreadsheets it's recorded as father is dead, yes or no. And as far as I can tell, from looking into at our code more closely, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that until recently you have been using the Arabic words for alive and dead in that column in the spreadsheet. And the problem only surfaced when you try to use yes and no. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So what
Right,
this...
Tarek?
Yeah.
Right, Tarek?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that's very good news, because even though we had this mistranslation, the words alive and dead, the Arabic words alive and dead, their meaning was translated it was stored in the database correctly. So if the Arabic word said dead, then in our database we would store father alive as false. And vice versa, if the Arabic word alive, then we would store that as father alive true. So the data integrity is not compromised. All the orphan records that have been entered into the database, they were fully validated, and they're valid. So we don't need to do any kind of a major rescue or cleanup of the data, which is the most important and most precious thing. And the only thing that we need to do is, since you wish to use yes and no instead of the Arabic words, the only thing that we need to do is to ensure that those words are stored correctly in the sense that you're trying to use them in. So when you say father is dead, yes, we need to make sure that that's exactly how we store it in the database without flipping it around. And that is a fairly easy fix, and I am in the process of working on it right now. I don't want to give you a specific time estimate for when it will be ready, but I am definitely expecting that within the next week I will send it to you for review.
That sounds great.
That's great.
Okay. Otherwise, our progress has been, again, somewhat slow. We have only 3 developers right now actively working, so things take a while, but we have, in the past week, we have finished some stories that have to do with filters. I remember you said that there has to be a filter for orphan name and for sponsor name, and then for the date ranges for the orphan birth date. And these features are either finished or almost finished. And again, we will send them to you for review shortly. And I think that's it. Christian, am I forgetting anything?
Can't remember. Can't think of anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's basically the major things that are happening with the application right now. So things are going well, but slowly.
Okay. So it's not also from our side. So.
Okay. Actually, so one question that I had for everybody, both for Ranim and Tarek, and for, I see Brian who's joined us, and for Christian, and for myself, I guess, is since our progress has slowed down quite a bit, do people still feel that there is a need for a weekly client meeting, or can we go back to the original idea where if we wanted to meet on a Sunday, we would schedule it, but otherwise we wouldn't have a meeting by default? I guess, Ranim and Tarek, how do you feel about it? Do you feel that we need, or that it's a good idea for us to still check in on a weekly basis, or is Google Plus sufficient?
What do you think, Ranim?
Well, I think it's good if we schedule a meeting when it's needed.
Okay.
When it's needed?
When it's needed, we will schedule it. I mean, not weekly.
Not weekly.
Yes.
Yeah. Christian, Brian, what do you guys think?
I'm good with weekly, so.
I'm good either way.
Yeah. Well, let's. I don't know. I tend to lean to maybe only scheduling a meeting when necessary, because we've had the last few meetings where we haven't had a lot really to say to each other. We just gave a quick update, and it didn't seem that there were any things that we really needed to discuss face to face.
But are we keeping the meetings, our meetings, development meetings?
Yeah, the dev meetings can stay definitely, yeah, and we can have maybe just a scrum on a Sunday, but if we don't have anything specific to discuss with the client, and if the client doesn't have anything to discuss with us.
Yeah, in that case, I agree with you.
Okay, so Ranim and Tarek, how about going forward? Let's say that we do not necessarily have a meeting on Sunday night, but if either you would like to speak to us or we would like to speak to you, then we just post a message on Google Plus and schedule a meeting, probably still for Sunday night, but only if necessary.
Okay.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. Is there anything else that anybody wishes to discuss?
I don't think so.
On your side, it's okay.
Okay. Well, in that case, we have Google Plus. We will send some, like I said, I hope that we will deliver at least something to you in the coming week. And I definitely hope that we will have that bug fixed up shortly. And I guess that's it.
I hope that this client meeting moving to, and when we need to talk, it's not something that we see it as we are not enthusiastic about a project or something. We are just trying to make it more efficient.
Yeah,
Definitely.
sure.
Yeah.
We know that.
Okay.
Because lately we are cutting down on time a lot, and
Yeah. Yeah. It's. I think everybody, just about every time that the development team talks to each other, everybody says how they wish they had more time to work on OSRA, but it's just other things get in the way.
yeah,
So yeah, I think we're all still very much interested and enthusiastic about the project.
yeah, yeah. Seriously, a good switcher.
Yeah, don't confuse lack of time for lack of enthusiasm.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, well, in that case, Ranim and Tarek, thank you very much for coming tonight, and we'll speak to you soon on Google Plus and at sometime in the future, again in another client meeting.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye. And Brian, Christian, you guys have anything to talk about?
Well, I would like to ask a question.
Sure.
If you remember, I'm working on the validation for the start date to not pass the OSRA establishment date.
Yeah.
And I'm creating custom validations, and I'm also adding the helpers
Yeah.
where I put it. So I got your comment about moving the helpers in different files.
Mm-hmm.
The only issue with that is that then when we need the helpers, we will have to include all the files, and then we'll end up in the model with include date helpers, include country helpers, include a lot of helpers.
Do,
Yeah.
do you think that's worse?
Yeah, isn't it?
I,
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
I,
sorry.
I think that might be a little bit more clear on what your intentions are.
yeah, but what if we have like 10 helpers we need? Isn't that a problem?
Um, well, I would think the problem would be, why is your model big enough to need 10 helpers? Nick, what do you think?
I understand that, at some point, um, either extreme is bad. Whether if we're including 10 helpers or if we're including one helper that brings along 20 methods with it, either way is bad. I would say that, yeah, I I agree with Brian's comment that if a model has so many helpers, then probably it's doing too much, and then the class no longer has a singular responsibility. Uh, it's trying to do too many things.
Mm-hmm.
What I like about the multiple, or let's say these kind of modular helper files, is that when you include a date helper or a date validator, it's immediately obvious what it does, and then when you see validates date is not in the future, you know, or at least you have a very good guess about where that's coming from. Whereas if you include helpers, first of all, um, that helper,
Yeah,
um,
but I know what you mean. But
yeah,
do we look at the what's included, or do we look where the methods are used directly, like somewhere here? I don't know. Validate. Like.
sorry, I'm not sure I understand your question.
So do we care that we have here include helpers or include date helpers, or are we looking here to understand the software, or are we looking here directly on what methods are used? And here, for example, we see valid date, and well, if valid date isn't here, then probably it's in the helpers. Does that make sense?
Um, yeah, I understand what you're saying. That if it's not in the model, then well, I guess it's probably in the helper. I mean, even if you have a date helper, the best you can say is it's probably in a helper. I don't know. It's like I said, I'm a fan of modular approaches and having classes that do a single thing, basically. So my preference would be to have.
What does Sandy Math say?
What does Sandy? Well, I think in this case it's not even Sandy Metz. I think it's the solid principles. Because a helper in the end, it's whether modular or class, it's still, let's say it's a class effectively. So if it validates dates and it sets the default country and does whatever else, then it's definitely handling multiple things.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But you know, what you say is absolutely right. That if we start including 10 different helpers, then the things are getting out of hand. But again, the solution, I agree with Brian, that the solution is not to mash them all together into a single helper, but rather to reevaluate whether the class is poorly implemented and needs to be subclasses need to be extracted from it.
Yeah, also things like this, like including each helper here, will slow down the tests, right? Because it will have to load this one by one.
Yeah, it has to load the file. I don't know how much of a hit you get from that. But you know, the other things to consider is that if your single helper implements one-two method.
Sorry. Yeah, I understand what you mean. But in production, having multiple files will not affect any performance, right? It's just loaded when you start the application, and everything is in the memory.
I'll have to take your word for that. I really don't know.
I don't know, but I have a feeling that Christian is right.
Yeah.
I don't think we use multiple threads, but if we were using multiple threads, it would slow it down each time it started a thread.
Oh, no, that's not what I meant. For example, in the production, when I don't know, the client creates a new sponsor, right? Then
Right,
the
yeah,
application goes to the model sponsor, and then it includes all the helpers, or the sponsor model is already in the memory.
Oh, yes, already in memory.
But are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, then we are safe.
So it's basically the first time you do it, there's a memory, there's a performance hit.
Yeah, it's loading all the files, the Ruby files,
right,
and including all the modules, right? So,
So that's an acceptable compromise then.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
One quick thing, maybe to add, for the start date, we were checking the validation with the presence of, because an invalid start date will by default be transformed to nil by the Rails model, I think, or the database, not sure.
It depends. It depends on what you give it. I think it takes. There's a difference. It treats integers and strings differently. I think because if the way it works is if you give it an integer, I think it will take that integer and try to validate it, or try to save it, and then that will fail because integer is not a date. But if you give it a string, it tries to parse the date out of the string, and when that parsing fails, it silently basically replaces that string with nil.
You mean this one will pass because it's a valid?
Yeah, if it's a string that can be parsed into a date, then everything is fine. Yeah.
Yes, but the presence of will do the same thing, right? This one will be transformed into a date format, and this one will be transformed into a nil.
Right. So but in this array, for example, that you're looking at, I think 7 and yes are not handled the same way. So you can try it in the console. I think. Yeah. In the console, if you do, I don't know, sponsorship new, for example. Assign it to a variable. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just let's start with that. So let's do SS start date equals 7.
7. SS. SS.valid, right?
Well, the point is not even that. It's going to be invalid one way or the other. But if you just do SS start date, for example,
Oh, it's
or
7.
okay, here, yeah, you can see that it's 7. Now do SS start date equals, and then a string 7, for example, or whatever you wish.
Okay. Oh, that's
Yeah, see.
interesting.
So
What?
it doesn't even try to validate it because it records it as nil because it tries to parse that sev into a date, and when that parsing fails, it just returns nil.
Yeah.
While you're here, what happens if you put a float in there?
7 is not float. It's good.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. So
Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I ran into it in some tests, and basically there was even I think somebody a long time ago had a pull request to propagate these error messages that happened on date parse in this case, and basically got shut down for reasons that I don't recall.
I'm saying because I removed all the presence of this validation and created a valid date present. So this one will check for the presence of a valid date instead of just presence.
So it ensures that it's present and that it's valid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because before this we had only presence of,
Mm-hmm.
and the 7 would pass the presence of this 7.
Right.
Right? So we got the invalid error from the other validation, like for example, date, start, no, sorry. For example, this one.
Yeah.
This one also had to check for the valid date, and then it checked for the date beyond OSRA establishment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
I had two validations here.
Mm-hmm.
Now I
Yeah.
removed it. Here we only have one.
Yeah.
So this one, it's this way. It's doing it one by one. Not sure what if you see what I mean.
Yeah. I understand what you mean.
Okay.
I don't know if this is strictly necessary because, as we said, since in the database this is stored as a date, if you give it an invalid date, it will fail anyway. So you'll get the default error from active record.
Well, not exactly, because if you give it a 7, well,
Yeah.
actually, when you give it a 7, it's going by a string because it's a text field.
Yeah.
You don't really get this 7 here.
But if you do it, if you give it 7 integer, for example, and then you ask if it's valid,
Yeah.
it'll tell you that or I think it should tell you that it's not, right?
Well, yeah, it tells you that it's not because it's not passing other validations. But if we have the presence here, as it was before, like this,
Yeah.
this one will pass, and inside this one we had another check to see if date is valid.
Okay, so if you comment out line 33, and then I guess you need to reload your console, and then you give it a start date of give it an integer.
There's a reload bang method too in Rails console.
Oh right, forgot about that.
Yeah.
I've heard stories about sometimes it doesn't quite work right, but I've never seen that happen.
Maybe if you add new files. Not sure.
Yeah, I've had problems with it not that long ago actually, but I can't remember what exactly was wrong.
Oh, that was going to be my question.
Yeah. But I think it was something very similar, like I changed the model file and somehow the changes didn't take effect.
What?
SS.
Oh, sorry.
You know, I'll make a bet that has something to do with the same thing when Rails server. You can change views and controllers and all models and all kinds of stuff without restarting your Rails server, but then sometimes you'll make a change and the Rails server just won't work until you restart it.
Yep.
It's whatever it is probably the same thing.
Well, that would be a good place to bet your money, I think. Yeah. So why is it failing?
It shouldn't. Fix now with
Sponsorship 43. What's that?
oh, sorry, I was in the sponsors.
Ah.
But still, why is it failing? So the sponsorship start date valid.
It's in this line 43, start date no later than the 1st of next month. So it's trying to compare 7 to a date.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I need this valid. Do it like this. Valid date and then check it.
But then, sorry, we were in the sponsor model originally?
Sponsor. Yeah, originally, but...
Yeah. Well, we can do the same test with the sponsor instead of sponsorship.
Yeah. Okay. It's not a valid date.
But you have that line is not commented out, right?
Yeah, where is it? This one, right?
Yeah, so you just want to say presence true.
Reload.
Yeah, let's hope.
Oh, does it know the variable?
Yeah, the variable. Yeah.
Why is it? Shouldn't. Start date is not there. So it's valid. Right?
Yeah, okay, so it's not raising.
Start date is 7.
Yeah.
And the what I'm saying is that we got a start date validation error uh, when we did this because in date beyond OSRA establishment and which one other one? Date not beyond, maybe this one too. No.
Yeah, but I'm willing to bet that if you try to save a record with a date set to an integer, that's not going to fly. I guess you
Let's take first one.
sure.
Okay, and leave it to 7, right?
Yeah.
Okay, 7 here. And okay, let's save. Invalid input
Oh,
type 7.
Right.
So it passed
I expected
validation.
that to return false. I'm surprised that raised an error.
Yeah, me too.
Wow, that's kind of weird. That's scary, actually. I'd say bang, I'm sure should do that, but save. Uh,
Yeah, there's some interesting behaviors.
Nothing.
maybe save just traps active record errors and not Postgres errors.
Well, it's showing.
Yeah, that's a very good guess, I think.
The only safety thing we have is that we will never get this 7 here because all text fields are passed by string, right?
Yeah, yeah. From the params, it
Yeah.
comes in as a string.
And there's no way to get an integer.
Yeah, and so yeah, and so now if you try that, so for example, if the client did that in the browser,
False.
then it's false because
Yeah.
it does validation on the presence.
Actually, it's nil, right?
Yeah, it will be nil, and since we have a validation on the presence,
Yeah.
yeah, it fails.
Yeah.
So in that sense, as I said, I don't know if there is necessarily a reason to validate that the attribute is in the correct format because the database will do that validation for you ultimately.
And
I think maybe
you say to keep the presence.
I think the only reason that I see for overriding it like that was if we wanted to provide a more friendly error message, because then it's we're doing the validation and we can give something more useful to the client, but yeah, it sounds like they're just going to get the date can be blank.
So this is the message.
Yeah. In fact, yeah, they're never even going to get to this point, right? Because as we said, they can stick an integer in there because it comes back in the params, it comes back as a string.
But this will also, this message will be sent for the nil.
Well, for the nil, it'll say that it can be blank.
No, because we are not using the. I changed it.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, if we do it like that, yeah. Okay, so in that sense, it is a more useful error message then.
Yeah, because in the tests, oh, I don't have but we are also checking for the integer. Also, yeah, here, and I don't know about true what.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in that case, I think that's that's a good improvement.
Well, if you want, I can remove it.
No,
Whatever.
just I agree with you that if say if the user enters 76 as a date, um, then instead of being told that a date has to be present because it's got coerced into a nil, instead they'll get a message that this date format is invalid, which is more useful.
Unless we do it like, I don't know how you do put a message here. Okay, this invalid.
Yeah, but in this case, maybe they didn't enter any date at all. Well, this is really, I think we're
the same thing.
Yeah, we're really, this is a tiny detail in the end. So yeah, I think what you've written, that validate presence, I think that's fine.
Okay. Okay, so the other validations here that needs to be moved in the validators folder, we'll leave them to another task.
Yeah.
Okay.
Split it up into multiple PRs.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. Thanks for clearing this up.
Yeah, sure.
Other than that, I think I'm good.
Okay.
I'll rename this helper and I'll submit a pull request.
All right. Brian, anything from your side?
Not on that, no.
All right. When are we going to see another PR from you?
So it's really hard for me to help OSRA because I do have small blocks of time here and there, but without knowing anything of what's going on or knowing how I can even help, it's difficult. So I wanted to show up and at least see where you guys were at and what was going on. I know there's unfortunately, not too many people working on it.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Yeah, it's been pretty slow. But I appreciate your code review. That's for sure. So if you find yourself with time on your hands.
I guess while we're speaking, the database migration testing, that's very interesting to me. So is that not possible to do, or do you know?
Well, yeah, from everything I tried, and everything I've tried searching, basically that that test that I shared, that was about the best that I could do. And what you are suggesting, that migrations, you somehow programmatically run one migration after the other, and once you run the one that is under test, you roll it back and then you test it. Like I said, I'm not sure how to do that. And the other thing is that approach that I used to look at the schema migrations table and to see if there is a matching entry for the migration, for reasons that I do not understand at all, it starts failing. So I ended up taking out the if clause and just saying migrate down, because it was saying that the migration had not run yet, even after it had, and I was getting errors like this column already exists. And I expect that when that migration is not the last one, then things become even worse.
I've had severe migration issues with that Access Paranoid gem.
Yeah, I need to read up on that. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
The problem is when you're trying to run the migrations, it's trying to work, and it's saying that you don't have a deleted at column. Well,
Hmm.
of course. I'm running the database migrations. This is the first one in the whole project. But I don't know. It might be a gem thing, too.
Oh, sure.
I'm sure it is, but I don't know. It's caused me lots of headaches. So now I figured out you can just make a commit that removes it, and then cherry pick the commit, run all your migrations, and roll the commit back.
Yeah.
It's kind of dirty, but
it gets the job done.
that it does.
Yeah. In the end, like I said, it's in the production environment, that migration is only going to run once, right? And in the dev and test environment,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. You just reminded me of something that I forgot about like 3 times. I have a hypothetical question for you guys. From like a computer science point of view or whatever, let's say that all of a sudden Syria had a new province and they got rid of one.
Yeah.
So in your like database migrations and seeds and all that stuff, what do you think would be the best way to deal with that? Because you'd already have things that were tied to that, but you need new things to not be tied to it. And how would you deal with something like that? To where it was kind of like a fixture-like entity, but it changed.
Yeah. So basically, you need to honor legacy data, but make
Yeah.
sure that you don't propagate that. Oof.
Well, I mean, like with the seeds and stuff too.
Yeah. Um,
Because here's the problem. So basically, how would you keep the? Well, I know a lot of ways you could do it, but what do you think would be the best way to, like, if you modify this table or whatever with seeds on the production server, you need to make sure that the IDs stay the same on each of the current provinces that are in there right now.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been pretty confused about this.
Yeah, that would cause us major headaches, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out the best way to do something like that, and there's just no good way.
I mean,
There really-
I'm thinking of reaching into like basically booting up the Heroku console and just adding a new province by hand.
You mean Rails const? Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't rely on the seeds anymore. The seeds ran once and never again.
But then your tests, then that breaks tests. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah. And then how you handle legacy data in that case, I really don't know. Like you need to basically say that for existing records, it's okay to have that province, that non-existent province, as an association, but for anything new, that's no longer valid. I really don't know how you would do that.
I was thinking about, I don't know, just making seeds or something that's like, um, look in the provinces table. Is this province there? If it is, okay. You know, is this its ID or whatever? It seems really bad way to do it, but for each one, and then when you add a new one, you just do that again, and it'll look and it'll see, oh, this one's not here. Let me put this one in. But then you have to have some kind of workaround so that you can't link a new one to that, like some kind of model validation or something. I don't know, to where, I don't know, belongs to, but then you have some kind of validation where this can't be that. And then it seems like, okay, well, that would be fine if one province was that way, but What if you had a whole bunch of those?
Yeah.
Just like
You create a new model called, I don't know what, updated provinces, and then you, I don't know, somehow programmatically migrate those foreign keys. Like you create the secondary association, and then
and so like the file that Christian has up on his screen, something
yeah,
like that. If you were just to add a province.create at the bottom, that won't work because I've been here. Um, it's going to add, when you rerun the seeds on the production server, you're still going to have all the other provinces. So now you're going to have a duplicate of all of them except for the last one.
well, you won't because we have
Unless
validations on provinces that won't allow those codes to be reused. Yeah, we had a long discussion at one point with Craig about making seeds idempotent so that you can rerun them a million times and they don't.
that, I guess that's a better way to describe my specific problem, yes.
Yeah.
How to make seeds idempotent.
Well, you can do the, what is it, find by or create instead of
And
create.
that, when I say idempotent, that means they have to have the same database ID also, which is something that is usually outside of your control.
Yep.
I don't know. It's something I've been trying to wrap my head around, and it's not easy to figure out. Like what I can think of a million ways to do it. I can just go manually edit databases and stuff, but none of the ways seem good.
Like I said, if I don't know, I would probably try to develop that idea that I had that you create a secondary model, like a second model, let's say new provinces or whatever you want to call it, and then you essentially try to migrate existing data from provinces to new provinces associations, but the new provinces seeds would then have the extra provinces or would be missing provinces or something like that. And then when you do the migrations, you do the find by name. So you set the ID for the new province foreign key based on the name of the province association or something like that. So that you don't have to rely on the provinces having the same keys.
That actually sounds like a nice, clean way to do it. The problem with that is then next week they add a new province again.
Well, then you just quit.
Well, that's not an option either, but
Right.
I don't know. This has really been perplexing me. Like, there's so many ways to do it, but they're all terrible in one way or another.
Well, adding new is a lot less of a problem than deleting something, right?
Yeah,
Because,
kind of.
we can go into our production server, add a new province to the database, and from that point on, modify the tests so that that province is valid. And from that point on, that province becomes available for any associations that you create. That's fine. But if Damascus ceases to exist as a valid province, then you're in a heap of trouble, I think.
What would you think would be the, like, I don't know how to word it. Do you think it would be good practice to have seeds that had Ruby code that checked to see if a certain thing was there, and then if it wasn't, to make it or do something?
Yeah, actually, I had.
Because that was kind of the way I was probably going with what I was doing,
Yeah, I,
just for lack of better way. I mean,
I'm just trying to think. I think I submitted at some point a pull request for making the seeds idempotent, and then it must not have been merged. I guess we decided not to go ahead with that.
Do you remember about when that was? Is it in November, December?
I would say,
October?
uh,
No, well, I can look for it. That's okay.
is it possible to search for a PR description, for a word in a PR description? Because I most likely would have included that exact term somewhere in it. Oh, that might be it. Number 306.
306?
Let me see. Yep. Make DB seeding idempotent. Two different approaches.
PR 306?
Yep.
That, okay. Oh, it's a commit. Oh. I thought it was a...
No, I'm talking, yeah, it's a pull request number 306. It was closed without being merged. It was just something that I was playing with and wanted to share.
That's very similar to what I was talking about. What does first or create do?
Exactly that. If it finds it, it just returns it, and if it doesn't, it creates it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much the same thing, just written a different way that I was kind of thinking might be one of the few ways that would work.
Yeah. And then if
To where you could go on the production server and run the seeds at any moment, and it's not going to break.
Yep. Oh, and then right underneath, you can see that for the development seeds, which are obviously not production critical, they all start out by wiping out that particular database, that table. So before seeding users, it runs user delete all. Obviously, that's not something that you want to do on a production DB.
That's really scary. You're one if statement away from wiping out your whole production database.
Yep. Well, there isn't even an if statement that just wipes it.
No, there is in the seeds file. If rails.environment.development.
Right. Yeah, sure.
You're one if statement away from just dumping your whole database. That's scary.
Whoopsie.
I know, right?
Well, that's why we back it up. Yeah, it's interesting to think about stuff like that.
All right, well, that was the question I had that I kept forgetting to ask in various other times.
So I have another one.
Yeah, sure.
So if you look here, I did a sponsorship.first,
Yep.
get the SS, ss.orphanid, get one, ss.sponsorid, did the query, and return 2. And both of them are here. Sponsor ID 2, sponsor ID 1. Okay? So,
Sounds reasonable.
yeah, but it's doing a query. And I'm only getting the ID. I don't need the entire record.
Well, then it sounds like the model needs to be optimized.
But that's...
So...
Yeah, I see your confusion here.
Yeah, so what I found is this delegate in the sponsorship model has this ID. No, sorry, the ID or the sponsor, I don't know. Ah, no, the ID,
Yeah, delegates ID to sponsor.
yeah.
Right.
And if I
So,
remove this, I think it will not do the query.
well, then that's
Because now if I do the sponsor, I think it's already stored. See? And if I do the orphan, it will do the query.
so basically what this means is that you cannot see the value of the attribute sponsor ID on the sponsorship record.
Without a query.
Well, not even with a query, because when you run that ss.sponsor_ID, it delegates that to the sponsor.
Oh yeah, and it gets the ID from the sponsor. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But technically that's a different two than the two that you get in the sponsorship record.
Yeah. How about this? Oh, I don't know yet. Let's say about left. Now SS. If this way it's working. And SS does. This will do the query.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That.
is this needed? I don't know why.
Well, it must be used somewhere, but this is and it was probably me who did it, and now that I've seen it, it seems like a very, very bad idea. Because we were making one of the attributes unavailable.
Yes, and we are introducing a new query when we don't need it.
Yeah. Okay, let's set up a Jira task to get rid of that.
Let's see, it's only for the sponsorship. Not here.
Is there tests on delegations like that?
I don't know, I don't think
Not in OSRA, there aren't. At least I've never written one.
I have never seen one in OSRA or anywhere, I don't think.
I think I'm probably the person responsible for about 90% of delegates in OSRA, and I've never written the spec.
it's only on the sponsorship.
Yeah. I'm guessing that just has to do with the view. Like somewhere there is a view that uses sponsor ID instead of sponsor.id. That's why that's there.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be easy to. Actually, looking at that, it must be the new sponsorship view. So that should be easy to fix in the view and then get rid of this delegation.
Do you need to fix it? Because it will do the same thing. This ID.
Actually,
Doesn't look like it needs to be fixed, but probably should be.
Why?
Get rid of it and see what happens. But yeah, actually, yeah, I think you're right. There's probably nothing to fix.
And I run the tests, or how do I check this?
You can maybe try running a sponsorship feature.
Okay. What is minus B? So far, say A.
Christian, do you always run Windows?
No, I'm on Linux. Why?
You're on what?
I'm on Ubuntu. This is Ubuntu. It's
Oh, I know, but it's in Windows.
it's a VM in Windows.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. I didn't know that.
Oh, it's lately, like 2 weeks ago, I moved to a VM from the native Linux,
Oh, okay.
and it's not really a good idea because it's like twice as slow.
Oh, yeah, that's not good, but there are other good things about it.
Yeah, there are a lot.
I would love to do it the other way around. I would love to have a Windows virtual machine that I could open,
Uh-huh.
and I have a legal Windows key that I never, ever, ever, ever use, but I'm not really sure about how to get that installed and don't really have time to mess with it.
Well, it shouldn't be very complicated. VirtualBox is pretty straightforward.
Huh?
A VirtualBox, it's very straightforward. The VM, the VirtualBox.
So you
Well,
can.
well, I know that, but I meant like specifically for the vendor. Like, would they just let you download a version if you had a key, or would your key be tied to a specific computer manufacturer, and you would only be able to use a version that had bloatware and all that kind of jazz?
Oh, you mean you have a key and you don't have the software?
No, I do have the software.
Then what's the problem?
It's not in a virtual machine.
Well, you can install it into VirtualBox. You start the VirtualBox and install the software. You're saying about the Windows key, right?
It's not really that important. Yeah, I have a legal version of it. It's not in VirtualBox.
Yeah, I'm sure it will work in VirtualBox. Okay, so
Christian, what happens if you run this without doing the -PAA?
I don't remember. I have wrote it in those comments.md.
Because I'm just trying to think of trying to remember how I've been running features lately, and I don't think recently I've remembered.
Yeah, by default it will run the cucumber and cucumber PAA will do the same thing.
Okay, so when you're running AA features, you don't need the -P
Yeah.
AA. Okay, all right, that's why it was working.
So features. What?
Sponsorship feature.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's a VM. It's low. And I had to only give it one core of the processor. Start date invalid. This is from what I'm working on. I have to give the VM only one core of the processor because it was faster. If I give it like 2 cores or 4 cores, then it will be slower. I don't know why, but I guess simulating multiple cores it's taking more of the system.
It doesn't manage the multiple cores very well or something.
Yeah.
So it's failing, but it's not failing.
Yeah, it's the end date that I'm working on.
Right. Okay. So the view is being rendered no problem, and okay.
Oh,
Well, in that case, why don't you? I don't know. I'm tempted to say just take it out right now. In this pull request.
logically, it should do the same, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and if everything is working, then.
Yeah, I'll run the full rate on it and
Yeah. Okay.
just in case. Okay.
All right, guys. So yeah, Brian, if you don't have time to actually write any code for OSRA, then if you at least, if you do code review, that helps a great deal already.
That's one thing I can do. I'm really reluctant to take on a new story because the amount of time I have is it fluctuates a lot, and a lot of times it's basically nothing. I've got the obligations of basically 2 full-time jobs besides this, so um, that amount of time I'm busy, and it's kind of hard on me to get to OSRA, but I like OSRA a lot, so
Yeah. Well, and if you do if you do code reviews, that gives you some idea of what we're doing.
but yeah, it's the tasks that wouldn't involve longer term commitments like code review would be much better for me, and it might be better for you guys too, because I remember waiting a long time for code review in the past when I've written
Yeah, yeah.
features.
Yeah, also, this way you can stay up to date with what's happening.
Yeah. All right.
I can definitely try to do stuff like that. That actually works better for me. It's I'd rather write code, of course, but um, I would prefer to stay involved with OSRA. I like the project. I like the way it works, and the what's the word for it? The fact that the code is all by the book kind of stuff.
As near, as well
Yeah,
as we know the book, I guess.
I know you were about to say something to that effect.
Right.
I
Depends
thought
what
it
book
was
you
much.
wrote.
I thought it was much farther from ideal before. Now that I've seen a lot more code, it's actually in probably like the top 1%.
Well, let's keep it like that so that, or not if, let's say when we all have paying coding jobs, we can come back to OSRA and just have a little tear at how beautiful the code is.
Yeah, and or maybe we can always come back to OSRA and see how we did it here, because this is the good way to do
Yeah,
it.
I think both of those things already happen, at least for
yeah.
one of us.
On a Friday night, you pour yourself a glass of scotch, lock the door, go to GitHub OSRA repo, and yeah. All right.
So Brian, are you going to finish this pagination?
I talked to Nick about that at some point. I don't remember when. I thought that I had finished those things. I'll have to look.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. So if you find the updated commit, then just push that up and.
Yeah, I have to leave. Let's see, what
Oh,
time is it?
Well, yeah, I didn't mean right now.
I have to
But
leave in about an hour, and then I have to check since today was daylight savings in my state, in this country.
Hmm.
I need to check that an app didn't start misbehaving because of that. But I might be able to get to that too tonight. I'll check it out.
Okay. And I guess if we don't hear from you on this count in a couple of days, then I don't know. We talked about you, Christian, taking it over.
yeah,
Yeah.
I remember, yeah.
Okay. All
So
right.
that's another thing. I'm always in GitHub. I mean, if you sent a pull request to my branch, then I would just accept it right away. I wouldn't review it or anything because the review's happening in the Agile Ventures repo.
Right.
So yeah, if there's any pull request that shows up to my branch, then I would just click accept. So
Okay.
if somebody wants to work on it or whatever, that would be fine too.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, we'll see how it goes then.
Yep. Okay, guys. Well, let's. I don't know. Don't get depressed too much, Brian. Things will pick up.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
A large source of my obligations will hopefully go away here in probably no more than a few months. So
Okay. That's
I'm intending on coming back to OSRA a lot when that happens.
all right. Terrific.
Nick,
So when are the scrums now again?
Tuesday, Thursday, 20 UTC.
20 UTC just changed today, so that's 15 now for me.
Yeah.
Why?
Okay.
The daylight savings time, but not here yet, I don't think.
No, daylight savings time is dumb.
I can't remember when we set our clocks forward.
Oh, it's different in United States?
Uh,
Date?
It's different in lots of places.
Really? Oh, I didn't know
Even
that.
some places within the same countries are different. It's a nightmare.
Holy shit.
yeah, it's
Interesting.
Yeah, if you ever work with time zones, like in a program, good luck.
well, I can't find when it changes here, but I assume somebody's going to tell me.
Last week of the month of this March?
It could be.
Last Friday, maybe? No, weekend. It's
Yeah, it's usually
Saturday to Sunday.
Saturday to Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we might then reschedule to what would it be to 1900 UTC?
Yeah, that would go back.
Oh wait, we want to go forward. So 2100.
No, you would want the UTC to go backward. So your time, because otherwise your time's going to go forward.
Oh right. Okay.
You were right the first time.
Okay. This just makes my head hurt. Anyway, for now, it's at 2000 UTC Tuesday and Thursday.
Okay, that's pretty
Are
bad.
we taking the Sunday one?
Well, Sunday, today I thought about it actually around 10 o'clock, but family time is kind of crazy around that time. Got to get the kid ready for, two kids ready for bed, ready for the next day. So, but I don't have to be there necessarily if you two guys are around on Saturday, Sunday, whenever it's convenient for you, then by all means.
Okay, good to know.
Saturdays and Sundays are
Oh yeah, I prefer Sunday.
Yeah.
at least somewhat doable for me. Weekdays, at least during the day, which is during the afternoon and evening UTC, not really doable for me anymore.
Yeah. Well, if we don't have the client meeting now every Sunday, we can have the Scrum then at either 2000 or 2030. How about next Friday, for example? Let's all touch base on Slack and see what everybody thinks about a weekend Scrum.
Next Friday? Oh, Slack, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Have a good upcoming week, I guess.
Yep. You too.
All right.
You too.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.